name is Johannes Lindqvist, and I'm a Swedish architectural visualization artist. In this video, I will introduce you to FStorm Render, a young, unbiased GPU renderer developed for 3ds Max by the Russian company Pinksoft. This render engine is unique in the way that it's developed to replicate how a camera sees the world, instead of only focusing on physical values. The bottom line with FStorm is that the default settings usually works very well for creating photorealism. Because of FStorm's simplicity, you can create stunning, very photorealistic images with basically a few clicks. It's super easy to learn, and it gives you just the necessary settings you need to have control over your image. As I usually say, FStorm enables me to work like a photographer instead of a technician. Before I explored this renderer, my work were very much about problem solving. Now I can put all that behind and focus all my time on design and creation. FStorm is based on the CUDA technology, meaning that it only works with NVIDIA graphics cards. To date, the most price-worthy card is the GTX 1080 Ti. The benefit of GPU rendering is that it's very scalable. If you have one GPU in your computer, you can add one more and basically double the render speed. This means that you can increase your rendering speed without having to buy a whole new computer along with new licenses for all your software, etc. Okay, let's go through the basics. So when you've installed FStorm Render and you've activated as your current renderer, in the Common tab, the only thing you have to care about is the output resolution size. All the rest of the settings you can find in the FStorm settings. This is basically everything you need. As FStorm is interactive, you have the Run RT mode button here, which opens the interactive renderer. In the kernel settings, you have all the technical settings in the renderer, like render samples, light samples, max depth, GI clamp. These four things are the things you usually change, but I will go through each and one of these in another video explaining exactly what they do. For now, you can keep everything as default. In the environment settings, you set the environment light. You can add bitmaps, you can add colors, and you can add an alpha environment. Let me start the RT mode. Okay, so this is how the RT looks like. And as you can see, it's fully interactive, so if I move the camera, the image will be re-rendered. However, for now, if you move some objects, they will not be updated in real time. You will have to reload the scene. This, however, is a feature coming in later versions of FStorm. So let's get back to the environment. If you can see that if I change the multiplier, the strength of the light is changed, and the renderer and the image is re-rendered. I can change colors to have red light. Yeah, that's sexy. And I can add an alpha environment, which means that I can have another color in the sky without actually changing the skylight color. We can go into that more later. If you open the tone mapping tab, you will find all the necessary settings to induce your image. So this is where you change the appearance of the rendering. You have exposure, contrast, burn value, white balance, vignetting, and you can also add your custom lookup tables. Let's start with exposure. You can see that if I'm changing the exposure, it's not actually re-rendering the image. So I can do this and play around with the appearance of the image without actually re-rendering, so I can do that as long as it's rendering. If I up the exposure a little bit, I can turn down the saturation. I want the saturation there though. I can change the contrast if I drag it down or up. And I have the burn value, which is really good. This is a way to control overexposed areas. So if you pull it down, you can see that the overexposure went down a little bit. But the good thing with this is that you can actually put it on a negative value. So if you put it to -1, for example, or even lower, -2, you can see that you're instantly getting all the details back in the exterior. However, the whole image is becoming a bit dull, so you have to be careful with it. With the white balance, I can obviously white balance the image. So if I can make it a bit more colder or warmer, or if I have the need for it, I can actually pick a color to white balance it to a white point. So basically you can actually have like a gray card or something and white balance your image to that, like a real photographer if you want to. The custom lookup tables, I have some installed here. When you install FStorm, you will have a bunch of pre-installed lookup tables. I've removed them because I don't want them, but you can add your own, or you can use the one that's built in. And you can see if I activate a lookup table, I can have some cool color grading effects here. You can also change the strength of these, maybe 0.5, 0.2, whatever you want. In the camera tab, you can activate depth of field. The radius is measured in whatever units you have set up in 3ds Max. So in my case, I have it centimeters. Now this is actually possible to translate to a F number if you want to. If you go into this link, uscolas.com/fstop.htm, you can find a little chart here which says, for example, f number 2.8 equals radius of aperture in millimeter 8.9. Now 8.9 millimeters equals 0.89 centimeters. So now I have it set up to f number 2.8. Now the real nice thing with FStorm is that in the RT window you have this button called Set Focus. With that you can click wherever you want in the image and your focus will set there. Now I have the focus on the knob, and if I click over here, I will have the focus on the oven. Now as we're speaking about the RT, you also have the region render setting here. If you activate that, you can add small regions which tells FStorm only to render that region. This means that FStorm will focus all the GPU power to this small region. If you hold Shift, you can actually add more regions if you want to. So you can have all these in the meantime. If you hold Alt, you can remove, or just let go of all buttons, create a new box, and it will replace all the other ones. In the depth of field, you also have the blades. This will not be very visible now, but if you have a bokeh, that will definitely make a difference. And the bokeh is always activated in FStorm and gives you a really nice effect. I think that you can get a little bit effect of it here. If you open the glare tab, you will obviously find the settings for the glare. I've created a really strong light here so I can demonstrate the settings. Now if I turn this on, one thing you will see, just as the exposure or the whole tone mapping tab, the renderer is not being restarted, so the glare is actually calculated on top of the render itself. So I can change the power, like this. Takes a second to update. Like that. I can change the blur, have it sharper or blurrier, like that. The size, you can see, yeah, there the size goes, like that. I can change the number of rays, of course. And the contrast, because the glare is made up of two parts. It's the glare and it's the glow. The glare is the star you can see here. The glow is kind of like the white, foggy effect around bright areas. The contrast changes the balance between the glare and the glow. So if I take this, if I put this to 0, I will get more glow and less glare. You can see that the star itself is gone, but you will have a nice circular glow instead. If I put it to 1, I will have less glow, but the star is more apparent. If I put it to 0.5, I will get 50% of both. The render log is really good to see if you have any errors. For example, if you have any rendering issues that you cannot actually get your image to render, you will most likely have an error message here in the render log. This log can tell you what the problem is. In most cases, the problem is that you're out of GPU memory. in the RT render, you can see how much memory you have up here. So this scene uses 1.42 gigabytes out of 10.2 available gigabytes. And if you run out of memory, you will have an error in the render log. Now, if you have an error that you do not understand, you can always copy and paste that to the support of FStorm. For example, in the FStorm Facebook group, or in the FStorm forum, or in a mail to the FStorm developer themselves. The GPU manager. Here you can see all your GPUs. So this is all the GPUs that you have installed in your computer, and you can set these to render or not render. You can also set them to low priority, which means that they will render, but a little bit slower. In my case, where I have several GPUs, I've turned one of them off, and this that is turned off is the one that is used by Windows, because Windows takes a little bit of memory for itself. So if I activate it, you can see, if you look at it up here in the memory, I have 10.2 available gigabytes. If I activate this card as well, that goes down to 6.69, and that's because this card is also running my monitors and Windows uses some GPU memory. And I have Photoshop running, which also uses a bit of memory. Now, one thing you should know is that you will always have as much memory as your lowest GPU. So if you have a countless numbers of GPUs with 12 gigabytes of memory, if you are having one card activated that has 2 gigabytes of memory, you will only have 2 gigabytes of memory. So you will never get more than the least amount of memory you have in one card. You can also see there's a checkbox for material editor, and this means that you can select which GPU is supposed to render the preview images in the material editor in 3ds Max. If you are, by some reason, sometime having all black previews in your material editor, most likely you forgot to activate one of these. In the tools, you have the scene converter. And here you can convert from Corona, V-Ray, and Octane render. And you can check and uncheck which parts of those scenes that you want to convert. So if you, for example, merge a V-Ray model into this, you click convert, and then you will have working materials. It doesn't always work perfectly, but it takes you a very long way, so you can just tweak the shaders a little bit to make them look right. But mostly they work just right out of the box. You also have the light lister, where you can see all the lights in the scene. And you can see you can turn them on and off here, so you don't have to roam around in the scene and click and select all the lights. You can find them here. The object properties. This box, you have, this box is the same as if you right click on an object and press FStorm object properties. In this box, what you use this mostly for is to enable the instancing. Because if I copy this oven a few times as an instance, by default, FStorm will not consider these to be instances. So the geometry of these will be loaded separately in the memory. However, if I right click on them, go to the properties and check instance, then I know that having 5 or 500 of these models will only take as much memory as one of the models. So that is a really important thing you need to know. If you are instancing things, always check this instance box. The only case you do not have to do that is if you're using ForcePack Pro, because with ForcePack Pro will automatically go in and make your models instances. Creating lights works just as in any renderer. You go into the Create tab, you have the lights, and choose FStorm. Now you have FStorm Light or FStorm Sunlight. Let's start with the FStorm Light. If I create one here, right now it's being created as a sphere. I can change if it's supposed to be a plane, a disk, makes it circular, a sphere, or an IAS geometry. If I, for example, use this plane, I can decide if I want to use it as a custom color, whatever color I want, or as a temperature, or add a texture to it. The directional, I can actually show you this. Let's update the RT. So if I go in here and just turn off the environment light for now. So if I change the temperature to maybe 6000, I'll get a colder light. Like this. This is nice. Looks cool. And I have the nice glare here as well. Really good. So if I have the directional unchecked, this will emit light in all directions. So it's like the light is totally flat. If I add a directional, it will act more like a light that has a cone around it, or if the light is actually further into this object, for example like in softbox. And you can also see that when having the directional on, you can see that I have some help markers to see how the directional is calculated. Now we have it in 90 degrees. If I put this to 180 degrees, I will get the same effect as not having it on at all. If I put it to like 10 degrees, it will be casting light more or less only straight down. So you can see that if I change this, the lines also change. This is really nice. If I add an FStorm sunlight, let's do that. Now this does not matter where you place this in the scene. However, if you add it like this, you will have to update the scene like with the update button. But when it is added, when you have updated it, you can actually change the direction of this in real time without having to update the scene. Now you can see that you have the sunlight, but there's no skylight. And that's where this comes in, because this environment tab, it lets you control the skylight. So if I open the material editor, I create a maps FStorm sky. I can put this into this dialog here, instance, put multiplier as 1, and I can see I have the skylight. If I increase the power, now you should know that this skylight and this sunlight is automatically linked together. You can see there's no options to do in the skylight here. So they're automatically linked. So if I increase the value here, you can see I get more light, stronger sun. And I think that I can actually also add a multiplier. Yes, so I can actually increase the strength of the skylight separately if I want to. I can change the sky color. And I can change the hour and the month of this, but I have to add a latitude to have those correctly calculated. The size determines the size of the sun, which basically means that you can add the effect of having clouds in front of the sun. You can see now if you're making it bigger, the sun is getting more spread out, just like it would shine through clouds. The turbidity and the density affects how it's kind of like the ozone layer of the atmosphere or something like that. So you notice that when you change these, the light and behavior of the light is changed. This is a really good way to be able to, you know, set your lighting exactly how you want it to. Whoops. Like this. Another way to set lighting is to use an HDRI. So to load an HDRI, you will have to load a FStorm bitmap. And now while we're talking about the materials, you should know that only the FStorm maps works with FStorm. You cannot go into standard maps and use these. The only standard that actually works is if you go into materials, standard, multi-sub object. This works, but no one else. So if you want to load an HDRI, let me just find an HDRI. Okay, so let's click here. And I have some of my HDRIs here. These are from CG Source. And I've actually modified them. Or no, my friend Daniel has modified them actually to get the some ground and trees and stuff in them. So let's remove the sky from here and make sure that we do not have any lighting in the scene. Okay, we do, but that's just this ordinary lighting here. We can put this black. So now to add this one to the skylight, just to as you did with the FStorm Sky, just put the map in here and you have it there. One thing you should know though is that always when you're loading bitmaps in FStorm, you should have them as gamma 1.0, except HDRIs. They should be gamma 2.2. Also, the mapping has to be changed to spherical mapping, or to spherical environment. Otherwise, it will be mapped incorrectly. So now you have that. We can rotate this by using this offset. And a value of 1 means 100%. So that means 1 turn. So if you put 0 or 1, you will have the same result. If you put 0.5, then the sun will come from the opposite direction. So 0.25 means 90 degrees. 0.5 means 180 degrees. Okay, now one very important thing you have to know is that when you are having an HDRI with direct sunlight, you have to tick this checkbox here called direct lighting. You have to enable that. Otherwise, you will not have any sun. So let's try to orient the sun here so we get the sun inside the room. Now we're having some sunlight into the room. If I increase the exposure, and let me just set a white balance as well. Something like that. Just tone mapping it a little bit. So now this looks nice. So if you are having this unchecked, you will have the skylight, but not the direct sunlight. Now, if you are doing an image where you know that you are not having direct light coming through the windows, for example, if I would have the sun coming from the opposite direction, you will see that enabling direct lighting will not affect the image very much. It does a little bit, but not very much. But however, having it enabled means that you will have longer render times. So in some cases, it's actually better to have it off. But if you know you will have sunlight in your image from the HDRI, make sure to have it on. Now, if you would like to, you can, for example, copy this map, put it into the alpha environment as well, and turn it on. Now you will have the same map on the visible sky. So this is the actual sky which casts lights, and this only controls the visible sky. So if you want to, you can add it there and lower the multiplier, and you can see that you get the background is becoming visible, because I know that many people likes to have blue skies. So that is a way to control that. You can also add flat bitmaps or JPEG maps, whatever you want to, in there. So that's the basics of lighting. Okay, let's do some simple shading. Now, if you want to create a FStorm material, you just go into here and create an materials here, FStorm, and apply that to this. So this is the default material, and the layout of this, it looks very like other renderers, but you have everything you need in one material instead of like other renderers that has different values for in different materials. So you have to make mixes and stuff. Also, you actually also have a subsurface scattering built into this material as well. So this is the only material you need. So if I want to change the color, I can do that. If I want to have some reflection, I can do that. The glossiness is changed. And you also have a value called glossiness Fresnel. That means that if you have a glossy value, you can see that surfaces that are pointing away from the camera, like here, if you add this, put a value of 1, those surfaces will reflect more, and they will have sharper reflections. So if you are looking at a surface from just in front of it, you will have more blurry reflections. And if you're looking at an angle, you will have more sharper reflections. Almost every material in real life works like that. So this is a good thing to have. Refraction is, of course, to have things become like glass. Like this. Now you have a glass pot. You can make that frosty as well. The rounded edges is a way to create, if you want chamfers on the edges of the object, but you don't actually want to have that in geometry, you can use it in the material instead. Works in most cases. Some cases this will give a really strange result, but in most cases it works good. Emission is if you, of course, want to make a light out of this. You can see that now it's casting light on the walls around it and all that. And if you're making like candles, or you have like one planes with only one surface, if you want them to be visible on both sides, make sure to check the back side. Also, sometimes you have to check this double-sided. This makes the whole material double-sided, so you can see it from the back side of polygons. And the subsurface scattering. If you're having a refraction and reflection doesn't matter, but if you have a reflection of one and a white color, like glass, if you add, for example, if you add an absorption, you can have it absorb different colors. Like for this, in this case, red, so we can make it look like, I don't know, wine or something, or vinegar or whatever. Whoops. Or you can use scattering to make it scatter light inside of it. For example, I don't know. Now it's scattering this color inside of this object, and now you can change the distance. So the distance determines how far the light rays will go into the object before they, get scattered away, or how to say it. If you put this to 1, for example, you can now see that you're getting some really interesting results. 0.1. Let's rotate the sun a little bit. So we don't have the direct sun onto it. I like that. Let's do it like that. Oops. Now you can see that the thinner edges is breaking through light, or it's letting through light, while the other parts are not. You can mix that with absorption colors, for example, having like a warm absorption and a colder scattering color. And you can have this to look like milk, for example, if you find the right balance. This can be really tricky to find the right balances of things sometimes. But you can see what's happening here. We're getting some really nice subsurface scattering results. Let's turn that off again. To have just an ordinary material. And the reflection off. And you have, if you want to have like surface noise, FStorm has its own noise material, which is really nice to have these cool effects. And you have the possibility to add like different levels of detail in this noise by using the iterations and the attenuation settings. You can play around with that, but so I won't go very deep into that now. So that is the basics of FStorm, and basically that is all you need to know to be able to use this renderer. The materials are really easy to do, the lighting is really easy to do, and the settings here are really easy to do, so you don't have to actually do much at all. So I will conclude this video, and thank you so much for watching. I will do the next video I will be focusing more on these settings, what they're actually doing and how you can use them to optimize your scene. And also I will be releasing some material creation videos and so on in the upcoming videos. So thank you so much for watching, and please, if you please join the FStorm community on Facebook. Just search for FStorm Render, and of course share the word. Okay, have a good day.